push through and punch through a vision with passion, a vision with passion.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Purpose by Design podcast. And I am Pamela Hinkle. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we have a special treat. A new friend of mine who actually we have found out that we've known each other through other groups. And we just sort of discovered that recently. So I have with me in the studio today, Miss JJ Conway, who is amazing, multi-talented powerhouse of a woman. And I'm so excited for her to be here and to share her story with all of us. So JJ, take it away. Tell us all about you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pamela. It's such a delight to be here on Purpose by Design, with Pamela. I'm so excited to be here because when I saw you speak, I was just so encouraged and uplifted. And I think as women, sometimes we don't take enough time to celebrate that in each other. And I just want to celebrate you and what you're doing to uplift the community and inspire people that they really can live lives by design and not by default. So, I guess you asked me to say a little bit about myself. And so when I think about living with purpose, there's two parts of my background that I'd like to share with your listeners today. And one of those is that growing up, a lot of times I was told that I was slow. The teachers even wrote it in my reports. And my mom, she was probably the only person in my life that didn't give up on me. And I didn't know that difference that makes until I had my own children, about what a difference it makes when the rest of the world puts a label on you and they decide that this is all you're ever going to be. And so I'm so thankful now that my mom stood up to that. After about second grade, she insisted on a particular teacher who was known to help slow kids succeed. And my mom gave me a couple years ago, she gave me those old files, and I was disheartened to look at what the teachers had written about me. But when I saw what this teacher wrote, she said that she thought I had potential. And she made it her mission to work with me until by the end of the school year, she wrote that I was on par with my reading and comprehension, just like all the other second graders. And it's one of those things that tells me that we don't ever have to fall into the box that the rest of the world has established for us.
Right.
And even years later, after car accidents or injuries or health issues or whatever it is that I've experienced, or the things that my clients have experienced, I know that there's always a way to be a person of value who gives value and is compensated with value. And so I'm very thankful now that I'm able to use that as a stepping stone experience to anything else that comes in my life. And something did come to my life that was a doozy. Now, I've had quite a few stories, and some of your audience may recognize from some of my other talks that I've done, where I was the first African-American to serve as a physicist in the Air Force. And there were a lot of crazy things that I had to overcome associated with that. But one of the things that I think is relevant to our discussion today is coming home from a military deployment to find my house sold and my stuff thrown out and divorce papers in my face. And now all of a sudden, I'm a single military mom with my family on either side of the country, no support system. And I have, thanks to my ex-husband's spending spree while I was gone, over $845,000 of debt to my name. And so when I sat in that situation, I did what a lot of us have to do. Let me rephrase that. I'd say for the first month or two, I just sat in numbness, if I'll be honest. But when it comes to overcoming something so devastating, we really have to draw upon our previous successes. And I thought about how back in grade school, they said I was slow. They said I wasn't going to get anywhere. Then I became a scientist for the Air Force, even though the Air Force said, well, you can't do it because you're Black. Then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did this, and then I did that. And after a while, it's like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I'm going to find a way to get through this.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful now that I can say I've gone through this. And I now help other people get out of debt, build wealth, and prepare a legacy for their children and the third and fourth generations.
Wow. What a legacy you're living. Not just leaving, but you're living. That's amazing. So you're helping people come out of debt and overcome all of that, but you're a living epistle example of how to stand against the tide. I mean, you didn't bow down to any of that stuff, whether it was because of coming home and finding your home sold and your husband who you were supposed to trust gone and all this debt, or it was being told that you were not able to be a physicist. You weren't able to do any of that. You rose up above all of that. What a testimony that is of your strength, but what you can teach so many others, because it doesn't matter, does it? We can do what has been put in our hearts to do. That's
Absolutely.
amazing. Well, with that, the first question that I had for you, I'm really excited to hear your answer, considering all that you've just shared about yourself. If you had a billboard, JJ, what would it say on the highways in America or all over the world? What would your billboard say?
If I had a billboard, what will it say? You know what the sad thing is I do believe the Lord is helping to be more humble, but the first thing I see in my mind is a big old picture of me smiling. I think what it would say is anyone can build wealth if they follow time-tested success strategies.
I love that with your big smiling smile, your big smiling face. I love that. It's very true, isn't it? Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that billboard.
That's right.
All right. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, I've just noticed that this is one of those times right now where there's a lot of billboard space available. And somebody just posted, they said, well, if you're not taking advantage of this fact that this has resulted from the COVID and everything happening, you're not going to, these are the opportunities for the little guy to build their business, and when I saw that, and I didn't think through it enough to have something eloquent to say about it. But when I thought about that, I'm like, in every storm, there is a rainbow. And in every rain that falls, there is life and opportunity that springs up. And as devastating as this has been for the last year, there are so many people who've launched businesses, who've grown their businesses, who've made advancements in their life. And that lets me know that when we design our lives and we walk according to purpose, yes, we might get a curveball here and there, but there's always going to be a door that opens up for us.
Yes, always. And that's the silver lining. And that's the win that we might not be seeing yet, but we're believing for, and we see it in our future, right?
That's right.
That's so true. Well, financial freedom and independence, I know, and our audience knows because you just talked about it a little bit, are near and dear to your heart. So you already sort of answered the question, but I'm going to ask it again. Can you share with us why it is so important to you?
Absolutely. This situation that happened with me, I thought it was just me until I learned that it's really happened to a lot of people. There are a lot of military people who come home to find their stuff sold or thrown out, or their spouse has taken out a new car or bought all these things and basically cleaned out the service member. And then they get a divorce, and that ex-spouse takes all the stuff, and the military member is stuck with debt and despair. And so that's the first thing that made me go, wow, this is really a problem. And then as I began to try and pull myself out of the problem, I began to see that there was not a whole lot of support for divorced women or single moms who were really trying to make a difference with their lives. And I began to see that single moms was really kind of like, it's not a marginalized category, but it really, when you're a single mom, there are so many things that are against you, that are just against you trying to get ahead. And it's like people don't value, unless you're the child of a single mom who values the sacrifice and the hard work that she put in to help give you a good life. A lot of people have very little appreciation, and thus they have very little desire to help. And so I ended up actually starting an organization called Military Single Moms. I'm tangentially involved now, but when I was active duty, I ran that for the last 11 years. And that opened up my eyes even more. And what I began to see through all of this is that there's a great need for economic empowerment, because 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They are one broken down car or one health emergency away from being bankrupt.
Right.
And in January of 2021, the stats show that consumer debt in America is just under $4.2 trillion.
Wow.
This translates not only to stressed out and anxious and frustrated people, but it also translates to decreased health, A, because of the stress, and B, because of less access to health care or less desire to run up medical bills, right? But that also translates to decreased profit and productivity at work. And so one of the cases that I make for people who may feel like they're okay is, well, you still need to concern yourself about this growing debt and these growing financial issues, because those numbers translates to higher taxes for me and my business, and they translates to more problems that our society needs to solve. And people need to have hope. And one of the best ways to get hope when it comes to money is to know that you can build wealth. And so for me, it's not just, it started out this way. It did start out as, me and my son are never going to live in somebody's moldy basement apartment again. We're never going to be in that place. Me and my son are never going to sleep in another Walmart parking lot. Me and my son are never going to have to get our meals by going to Sam's Club and getting all their free samples, and then going across the street to Myers and getting all their free samples. Like that was my original motivation when I launched into business, right? But now it's bigger. It's communities. It's changing communities. It's changing marginalized people's lives, giving people empowerment and the tools they need to pull themselves up. Yeah, you can tell I can talk about this all day.
That's awesome. I'm like totally enraptured by what you're saying. That's beautiful. And a takeaway for me in that was, there's a hope. There's a hope of having a different level of understanding, but a hope of being able to get through the financial junk. Because so many people feel buried in it. Like, there is no way, there's no answer. There's nothing I can do. You just feel compounded. But you said there's hope.
There's hope.
That totally spoke to my heart when you said that.
There is hope.
So, during one of your prior podcasts that I had watched, or maybe it was a video of yours, you said some people struggle about what they should. Oh, I skipped this question. I got to go back to number 2. Do you have any advice for us if we're contemplating hope, we're contemplating that next place, like somebody that's buried and feeling that pressure right now that you felt? What's the
Absolutely.
next step? What do we do? What do they do right now?
That is such a great question. And my answer to that question is going to come in 3 categories. Because if somebody is trying to contemplate a new financial move, it's going to depend on whether or not they're in that situation where they can't pay their bills and life is falling down all around them. Then you've got people that can pay their bills. They don't have a lot, but they have enough. And sometimes they feel like they should be satisfied with what they have and don't complain, right? I'll address that too. And then we have people who have significant wealth, but they don't necessarily know how to direct it. And this is so in line with living with purpose and having a purpose by design. Okay. Yeah. And so let me speak to the first group. And that is, your world is crashing. and everything is going crazy around you. You know, I spoke this morning with a potential client who had a stroke and is paralyzed on her left side, and all these all the medical bills, and then all the things that she can't do around the house. And she's away from her family. And she's got no support system in her town. And she's like, how do you even build a support system to help you in a new town when you're paralyzed in one side? It's so difficult.
Yeah.
And the first thing was like, okay, you've got a lot going on, but we're going to give you some power back in your life with a plan. And so if you feel like everything is out of control money wise, I encourage you to sit down with the financial coach, or even go out to my stuff. Pamela will let you know how to do that later, and get somebody in your corner who will help you come up with a plan. And yes, maybe there's some issues that are just, you don't know what you're going to do. But when we can put things on paper and say, okay, take one step, and here's the next step. And we're not going to worry about this right now because you can't fix it anyway. Take this step and this step and this step. And as you move forward slowly, the aperture begins to open and you can take care of more and more. The first thing I tell people in that situation is to stop digging the hole deeper, which means if you don't have the money, you're not spending the money. And that's a hard one, but it is the first step. So that's the first group. Okay. That's the first group. Stop digging the hole deeper. Come up with a plan. If you're too into it to be able to come up with a plan on your own, bring somebody in that can help you. And that doesn't have to cost a whole lot now. All right. So there's no excuses, no reason. This is your life, and you are the person who can pull yourself out. And I remember even this wonderful, beautiful soul this morning that I was talking to. She's like, how am I going to do this? I don't have anybody to help fix things up. I don't have anybody to help this. I said, but I'm going to show you how to attract that into your life. Wow. You're going to develop some personal power by getting your handle and a plan on your money, so that you don't feel so out of control. And then we're going to develop your personal power and your ability to attract abundance. People will help you. You will get through this. Mm-hmm. And I said that to her, but I'm also saying it to all of your audience today. It is possible. And it doesn't take very long to turn things around. Most people that work with me, it takes about a month or two to turn things around. And then they're amazed. They're like, doors open over here. Doors open over here, interest rates fall over there, fees fall off over here, bills get canceled over there. Someone gives you a car. I even had somebody get a house. I was like, how do you get a house? I was in $845,000 of debt. I mean, I'm happy for them. Don't get me wrong though, but I was like, did nobody give me a house? But I know, I'll tell you one thing. When I was in all that debt and I made a commitment that I was going to live for my future and not for my present, when I made that commitment, things started to change. And for about 2 or 3 years, I didn't have to pay for much at all. There was always something to do. There was always somebody who, my mom gave me these clothes and they are not my style, but I think they're your style, which, is kind of offensive in some respects, but they were right because I looked good. Their mom had money and she had good taste.
Right on.
So you know what I mean? Like, it's just amazing to me now. When you look on paper, at what I made, physically the numbers, it doesn't add up to 845,000. But somehow, by making the commitment to myself and my future, and my son's future, and this is what your audience can take away, by making the commitment to your future, it changes something in the spiritual world, in the physical world, in the energetic world, whatever things that even we as scientists don't know. I'm going to include the totality of God's universe. It makes a shift. And all of a sudden, all of these principles that are captured in the Bible, that are captured in Proverbs and all these other things, they start working on your behalf, and it will work. So that's my advice to the first group. Okay. And so that's when you don't know what you're going to do and you're broke and you don't have any money. And then you get to a place where you have some money and you're not there yet. You haven't arrived, but you can pay your bills. You got a little left over to have some fun with your family, and you kind of feel like, I know there's more, but there's so many scams out there, and I don't know which way to go. And this is where I really find that it's time to get in touch with your purpose and your calling for your life. I find that when we have more wealth and we have more financial stability, we can execute more in those areas. And I don't want to downplay the importance of that when you have nothing, because I do lead my clients who are struggling and can't pay their bills into creating purpose statements. But when you don't know how you're going to feed your family, you're not so worried about how you're going to feed the world. Okay. And so I don't focus on it as much with that group, but when in this middle group where it's like, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know if this is the right decision. There are all these opportunities. I don't know where to go. I'm always going to recommend that people get out of debt if possible. And I believe it's possible. I'm going to recommend that people get out of debt. I'm going to recommend that people invest. And if people have situations like me and my husband, we're married to people who are horrible with money, and we'll never be able to go out and get another loan for a house, which is how I learned how to invest in real estate without taking on debt. And that's what I teach people to do, right? There's always a way to do things that will help you financially. But when you're looking at making a financial move, it's so important to know who you are and what your purpose is, because then your purpose will help filter out all of the noise and all of the distractions that aren't right for you right now. And when you know what your purpose is and an opportunity comes up, and you can ask yourself, is this opportunity going to push me in the direction of my purpose, my vision, my calling, my goals? And if it's not, it may be an excellent opportunity, but it can be released for someone else. And so that's one of the first things that I would do. And then the other thing that I like to recommend to this group is that I would really focus on establishing yourself financially before you take care of everybody else. Especially my parents out there. We sacrifice so much for our children, and we want to give them everything that we didn't have. And what happens is, a lot of us as parents, we fail to secure our own financial stability. And then we've poured everything into our children, and then they go off and live their lives. And then we don't have anything for retirement. We may not have sufficient health because we haven't been taking care of ourselves. Moms, we haven't been doing our self-care, And so I really do encourage people to take care of yourself, build your foundation, make sure you're putting away an adequate amount for your retirement before you worry about taking care of your son or your daughter, who, you know what, they're cute enough. Somebody will help them get through college. They'll be okay. I'm cute now. Don't get me wrong. I'm cute, and Pamela is absolutely gorgeous. But nobody's going to help me with my retirement. I mean, don't get me wrong. Uncle Sam has a retirement plan. It's just not the one I want.
Okay, come on. Right.
And I remember when I was younger, and I used to think wealth was a bad thing. And this is what I'll address more when I talk about the third group. I used to think wealth was a bad, evil, anti-biblical, ungodly thing. And I remember one time someone began to challenge that belief in a class that I was in on legacy building. And one of the ways that they kind of challenged me on that a little bit was, thinking about your legacy that you want to live, and how are you going to do good for God's kingdom if you don't have anything? And I'm like, well, the Holy Spirit flowed through me when I was broke, and the Holy Spirit flow through everybody else. And didn't the apostle say to the blind man, I don't have any money, but what I have, I give you. Rise up in the name of Jesus. Right? Well, that's not exactly an accurate translation of those scriptures.
Absolutely.
And there are seasons, absolutely, where we're going to walk in seasons of lack, or seasons of grace, I call them, where we have to, where it helps us grow more in the Lord. And I wish I wasn't so hard-headed. Maybe I wouldn't have so many seasons of grace where I really have to hold on to his hand, right?
Right.
But if we don't take care of ourselves, and we don't understand that we can take care of ourselves financially, it actually binds us in the future from being able to take care of others and do more for others when our health is starting to fail, and when we're starting to get older and our energy has decreased. Now, do I believe that all of us as we age, it's inevitable? Of course not. I'm seeking to be my best health. I'm seeking to take care of my brain health. I'm seeking to take care of my physical health. I keep having car accidents and things, and I continue to keep working out, and I'm going to get back there. And I hold that image because I know it's so important to my physical, to my ability to do what God has called me to do. And so I don't ever want to say that you can't fulfill a calling without wealth. But when I look at scripture, and I look at how many people have been instrumental in the ministry, so many of them were people of means.
Very good. Yes.
And the Lord provided us over $2,500. I mean, $2,500. The Lord provided us over 2,500 scriptures about how to manage money. I don't think He would have done that if we were supposed to be poor for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
And so I wasn't planning on that. When I looked at what I was going to say on your show today, that was not what I was going to say. I really hope that was the Lord and bless somebody.
Yes, it did. Bless me.
But in that that second category, I find a big push to do for everybody else, and then leave yourself hanging. And we think, oh, well, God will take care of me and God will provide my needs. Yes, God will provide my needs, but is it God's glory for my needs to be provided eating dog food in my retirement? That's not glorifying God.
No.
And there's things that the Lord does for us. And I feel myself getting stirred up. So I want to calm myself down, because I get so frustrated as a person who's in ministry and been in ministry for 20 years. I get real frustrated because I feel like sometimes our ministry, we perpetuate these notions on the congregation, and we don't realize that we're holding them back. And so I'm a little worked up, and I don't want to sound angry or worked up or unhappy or anything, but I really want the best for God's people. And we think and we say these things, and we talk about giving, and we almost make God a genie.
Wow.
And we say, give, and it shall be given to you. And that's a biblical principle. But God didn't say steal from the bank and give the man of God your mortgage money.
Wow. Yes.
The Lord tells us to fulfill our obligations.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't necessarily, in modern terms, I wouldn't like the language, but, when somebody has mastery over you, the Lord says to serve them as if you're serving the Lord. That's what scripture says, to serve them as if you're serving the Lord. So if you have mastery over me because I owe you the bills, I'm not going to steal from you and then go buy a big TV for the big game. I'm going to pay my bills.
Yes.
And here's the thing. We can see that clearly. But when it comes to our children, when it comes to our sick mother, when it comes to our destitute sister or brother, we don't see it as clearly. And we don't realize that we are squandering or failing to well manage what the Lord has given us when we give to all of these people that need, and yet we don't actually have it to give. And so this is gonna bleed into, the third category of people. And that is, when we have a little something, now all of a sudden everybody wants.
Right.
And they feel entitled. They feel, well, you arrived, so you should give me something, because it's not fair that you have all of this and I don't have anything. And even when I was $845,000 in debt, I didn't feel that it wasn't fair that millionaires and billionaires had their money and I was in all this debt. I felt like I made a bad decision. I trusted somebody who had already given me signs that he was not worthy with money. And instead of nipping it in the bud, I continued to allow him to dig the hole deeper and deeper. And then when it came time for divorce, he used my son to manipulate my emotions and goad me into taking on all that debt. And I didn't say, oh, it's not fair. It's not fair. It wasn't fair. It really wasn't fair. But I made the decision not to fight it. And when the dust settled, it was my problem to clean up. And a lot of people can commiserate with me today. You've had a lot happen to you that wasn't fair.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. And it's not right. But the only person who's going to clean up your life is you. And with God's help, you can do all things. You can clean up the financial mess. It's not my lane, but you can clean up the relationship mess. You can clean up the heart mess. And you can move forward and do great things in God. Great things in your community. Great things in your family.
Great things.
So let me talk about some of these great things.
Yeah.
Let me talk about what you can do when you begin to dump debt and build wealth. You can be in the city office paying bills or renewing your business when a single mom comes along who's been scrimping and saving to pay her water bill, and you can go in there and pay her water bill for a year.
Yes.
That's the kind of thing you can do when you have wealth. When you have wealth, you can do matching fundraisers. A mentor of mine did this a couple of years ago, and I was like, Lord, I want to be the person who does that. I'm getting there. I'm not quite where I want to be yet, but I'm getting there, y'all. But he did a matching grant. He did a matching grant to print 3D prosthetics for kids in Paraguay. It's called Paraguay. For kids in Paraguay that don't have they're missing an arm, they're missing a hand. And this was when 3D printers were new. And so they print the hand, literally print the hand, print the arm. And what he did was do a match. And so for $100, you could buy an arm and a hand for a child. And he would double that. And so I said, you don't even have to have all the money. You just have to be a willing vessel. And I think back when I had no money, there were so many things that my heart wanted to contribute to. And I would get on Facebook when they first started the lives a couple years ago, I would get on Facebook and I'd be like, I want to help this person. I need you all to help me. I need y'all to Cash App. I need you to PayPal, whatever it was back then, because it changes all the time. I need you to send me $25, $50, $100, and we're going to help this person. And one time we were able to raise over $13,000 to help a young man who had been in an accident.
Wow.
And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And you think, well, what can I do? What can I do? What's going to give my life meaning? You can be abundant along this entire process, right? But when you've got your money straight and you get to the point where your investments are putting out more money than you need to live on, now it's when you can really live in financial freedom, financial independence, financial impact. You can help open up the orphanages in the countries that still need them. You can help change the lives of kids here in our foster system. You can help change the lives of single mothers and others who are working 3 or 4 jobs and can barely spend any time with their kids because that's all they can do. You can help empower the injured workers who've given their lives on the line in our law enforcement and in our fire and rescue. I came in contact with our local police department. Well, in my previous city, I just moved, but when I was in my previous city that I just moved from, I got involved with our law enforcement, and I discovered that they have a lot of access to trauma care. Same for our first responders, the fire and the emergency. They have a lot of things while they're working, but once they stop working, there's very little access to trauma care, PTSD care, things like that. Our military. When you have wealth, and not only when you have wealth, but you have the freedom of time, because you don't have to go to a 9-to-5 working yourself to the bone. When you have that freedom of time, now you can get out there and change things for people that you care about, change things for groups that you want to support,
Yes.
change things for people who don't have clean drinking water. Change things for kids who are growing up without anybody to love them. Change things for people who are developmentally delayed and their families can't afford quality therapeutic services. Now you can have significance and impact. And John Maxwell says, once you've tasted significance, success is never enough. And so if you're in the category of having this wealth and you're trying to figure out how to make a new financial move, I want to encourage you to do your research and make sure that the organizations that you want to either support monetarily or with your time are on the up and up. There are resources within our IRS. There are companies such as what's Ben's company? Southern Philanthropy. There are companies. One of my mentors, Ben Starling, he helps wealthy individuals vet different charities and find places that are legitimate to invest in. He also helps people who are trying to, and this, he didn't know I was going to say this today. This is not a paid commercial for him, but he helps people who want to start a nonprofit be able to craft that nonprofit in a way that it will sustain itself when it comes to the community work that wants to be done. And you can find somebody like Ben in your community. And so there are ways to do this the right way. Well, there's many right ways, but there are ways to do this where you are still being a good steward. Because I'm going to tell you what happened to me. I thought I was doing good. This was before the $800,000, in our marriage. We had gotten out of debt and we were investing in real estate, and we, had, almost $2 million worth portfolio. And we just thought we were the stuff. And we were buying cars for people. We were buying houses for people. We were doing all this stuff. Right. And we were doing it the wrong way. All we were doing was enabling people. We hadn't learned how to be good stewards.
So important.
And that's what I would encourage, that third category. Learn how to be a good steward, and then don't be afraid to go out there and do some good. I like to provide clients at all levels, even the ones who can't pay their bills, with what we call recommended guidelines. They're percentages in which you should spend your money. So, for example, I don't like somebody to spend more than 30% of their income on housing. I recommend that you budget 5 or so percent on clothing. A lot of times we don't budget for things like that. And then later on, we don't understand why we can't make this aggressive wealth building or debt dumping plan work, right? Well, because you're not giving yourself the things you need. And so we look at insurance, we look at healthcare, we look at all these different categories. What should you be spending? And giving is one of those recommended categories.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that people find ways to give back. And I recommend that people find ways to protect themselves from scamsters that do like I got done.
Yes, that is so important. Now, I wrote some notes here. I liked how you called them scamsters. That's cute. So a few things that I just want to reiterate because they just sunk in. It was all good. But a few things that just sunk in for me. You were talking about that people that work with you begin to see things turn around in a month or two. Like not everybody, but that people who take it seriously in a month or two. And when you said that, for me, I could feel like this relief, like really, I just need to, suck it up, buttercup, and then get focused. And in a really a short period of time, you start to see the fruit of your labor. Like that is huge. So for anybody out there that's listening today, whether you're reaching out to JJ, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit, or someone else, listen, if you really will focus, this doesn't have to, as long as it took you to get here, it might not take as long to get out, right? And so that's huge. It's, again, coming back to what you said at the beginning, hope. It's giving hope. And then you said to remember you. Remember you. Wow. Because I know for me, I can forget about me so quickly, whether it is budgeting something so that I'm ready for that next thing, or it is Oh gosh, when was the last time? I mean, I'll just tattle on myself. When was the last time that I like took the time to go get a decent swimsuit? Like summer's coming in Minnesota, like people go out, and what do I usually end up in? Like just a pair of shorts and and I'm not saying you have to have any of that fancy stuff, okay? But when I look at, my 20 something year old daughter who's like goes out and gets this pretty little swimsuit, and I'm like, when was the last time I did that? So, like we do forget about that, or we just get so focused on, well, my kids need this and my kids need that and my kids need this. And then there's nothing left over for mom. And then I think, at least for me, when I don't feel good about the way I'm presenting myself, and I don't just mean whether I have on a pretty color lipstick, although that's important. When I don't have that, then I don't feel as good from the inside out. So making sure that we're taking care of ourselves from the outside in, as well as from the inside out, is going to be huge for us going forward. And then you talked about what I have always called your deep why. You talked about the charities and the giving, and really coming back and centering up on God and saying, what is it that I want to do? If money wasn't an option, right? What would I do? Who would I help? And I loved that, because and if we focus on that, right, then that is going to help us have that motivation that we need to keep moving and deal with the junk that we're having to do in the first month, the second month, the third month, the fourth month. Make those hard decisions. Maybe make your own coffee instead of going to Starbucks, whatever it is, right? It's huge when you have that deep, firm, anchored why am I doing this?
Yes.
And of course, part of it is your family. Perhaps it's your retirement, but then there's that other why that you were talking about, orphanages and the foster care system. So many charities that are out there that people could help. And that gentleman friend of yours or client that you mentioned, and how he helps people figure out where they should invest their money. And I'm thinking, wow, what we need is more financially free people that have that heart that you're talking about, that aren't saying, I'm just going to take care of, us four and no more. Like, really, I'm going to go out and make a difference in the world. And we need people like that, like your friend, that'll say, okay, and here's some places you can do that at. So to me, I walked away from that with like some serious gold nuggets, JJ. And I want to thank you for that. That was awesome. Wow.
Why, thank you, Pamela, because I can be real passionate about money and about financial independence. And I don't know that everybody's goal watching today is, I'm going to build wealth so I can start a charity. I actually went through the process with Ben, and we got through it, and I was like, you know what? I'm not starting a nonprofit. That's not what I want to do. And I was like, please don't be mad at me. But I realize now, no, that's a different, I minister, and that's a ministry, and that's fine. But as far as these other things, it's not what I want to do. And so I don't want to make it sound like, well, that's the only way that you can be a good wealthy person is by starting a nonprofit or anything, but it keeps us grounded.
Yes.
And giving back and actually being intentional about giving back, it frees us up to build more wealth without the fear that comes associated with, am I a bad person? And so I would, if I have just a few more minutes, I would like to talk about that as well.
I love it. Yes, please jump in.
Because the circles that we both run in, and I thought it was so funny how you said in the beginning, we've been tangentially seeing each other and been in all the same conferences for a couple of years now. It's hilarious. But a lot of the people that we would attract to us, they're trying to do something with their lives. They're trying to build wealth. They're trying to establish a legacy. They're trying to have something, we're trying to move up in the world and make a difference, make money, making a difference. And one of the things that I'd like to address is that we often don't realize our negative beliefs about money. And there's things that we can believe and not even realize we believe them. Like I used to think, and many do, but I used to think before I became a Bible scholar, I used to think the Bible said that money was evil. And we know if we can read it, and it's been talked about a lot lately, so I'm sure many of your listeners are aware that the scripture doesn't say money is evil. It says the love of money is evil.
Right on.
You know, there's the love of money is the root of all evil, right? And so think about that though. If I in my mind equate having money with loving money, then no matter how much I say I want to succeed, my subconscious is never going to allow me to move forward. I'm always going to find a way to stop short because I don't want to be evil. And I've got that belief. And you can teach this stuff and you can know this stuff and still have that in there, because even a couple years ago, I was at a John Maxwell conference and you might know Chuck. He does a lot of volunteering there. And at the end of the week, when I found out that he was worth over $500 million, the first thing that came to my mind was, but he's so nice. And instantly the Spirit chided me because I had moved from my why just being about me and my kids not sleeping in that moldy basement apartment, right? I had moved forward to wanting to change communities. And what I felt like the Lord was speaking to me in that moment was that if I've called you to change communities, it's going to take more than $1 million. You've become comfortable with the idea of being a millionaire, but you haven't become comfortable with the idea of wealth. And it's going to take wealth on that level to change communities. And I was like, oh. And I mean, sometimes I'm just like, when I think about the totality of what the Lord has revealed to me about the things that he has called me to do, and I'm just like, okay, Lord, let's go. But I'm but in that moment, I thought, I've been teaching wealth for what, 8 or 9 years by then. I still hadn't got it through my mind that somebody who was worth more than maybe 10 million was a good person. I was okay. I was okay with millionaire. I had a lot of millionaire clients and friends, right? I was okay with millionaire, but 10, 20, 100, 150, 500 billionaire, I had to make that shift. And today I want to encourage any of your audience that feels like you've got these money goals, you're doing all the right things, you're checking all the blocks, and it just seems like things fall apart at the last minute. I'd encourage you to spend some time authentic journaling or in prayer or some other avenue where you can really uncover what's going on behind that. Because as long as I had that hidden belief, I was never going to make it past $1 million net worth.
Right. That's so valuable. And our mindset determines so much, doesn't it? So we can be doing all the right things and yet be our own worst enemy. And not even realize it. But when we will spend time to peel back the onion, so to say, it all starts to come out. And the greatest thing about that, to the listeners today, is when it comes out, it just means you're getting better. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm awful, I shame myself. It means like, no, I'm cleaning up, I'm cleaning house, I'm beginning to see things differently. And that, I think, is what I call that aha moment from God, where you really begin to line up your thoughts with the way he sees things. And then mountains move, don't they? They just move, JJ, they move. Wow, that is so awesome. Well, as we're beginning to wind down here, I have another question. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
We'll just fire away on them. So I wanted to ask you this question, and you sort of addressed it, but you also said this. You talked about how sometimes in certain circles, and you mentioned ministry, and being that both of us come from that, are in that and have that background, I think it's worthy to bring it up, that we're told to give everything away. Just give it away. Jesus gave everything away. But when you give it all away, what's left?
What's left? And that's the thing. That's the thing. When I've been helping people get out of debt for a long time. Even before I got into that 800,000, I had already gotten out of debt the first time, and I'd been helping people for 10 years. So I already knew a little bit about how money works. I mean, I had to learn more. I had to get more detailed to handle that amount of debt. But one of the things that I did when I made this a business is I thought I was going to go into all the churches, and I was going to have all the pastors bring me in to teach their people how to manage money, and I was going to make money, and they were going to get out of debt and be able to give more. And it was just going to be this happy, wonderful, heavenly, glorified thing, right? And what I discovered really quickly is that when you have a message of pay off your debt and then invest, pay your tithes, definitely pay your tithes and your offerings, but make sure that you take care of your family before you do a whole lot of extra and above. Pastors don't like to hear that. And so for me, it was a real rude awakening, because there's so many, and it's not just pastors, but it's just, for me, pastors, having been a pastor, I can see it from the other side now. I can understand now why we want to kind of encourage people to give, because a lot of people don't give. Well,
Right.
a lot of people sit in church and they take the blessings and they eat the donuts, and then they don't contribute.
Right.
And I remember one time, I had a family member, and we went to their church, and they gave out all of these different donuts and teas and all these kinds of things before service. And then they didn't put anything in the offering. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm a visiting pastor. I really don't want to be seen not putting something in the offering. But I forgot my purse or my wallet or whatever it was. And so they pull out $1. I'm like, you ate $5 worth of donuts. They were so mad at me. But they were so mad at me. But the next time I visited their church, they had money. So I understand that. But the problem is that especially in the Christian faith, we are called to give, and we are called to be generous, and we are called to be abundant. And sometimes it's hard to establish those proper boundaries, because you listen to those radio ministries and you watch the TV ministries, or even in your own church, and they're like, if this has blessed you, sow a seed, sow into our ministry. And it's a biblical principle. If the man or woman of God is a blessing to you spiritually, the Bible does say you give to them of your substance. That is a biblical principle.
Yes.
But what I led my congregation in, and I found that my congregation became more blessed, was that the Bible also says not to be a borrower if you can help it. The Bible says to give a certain amount, to bring your tithes and your offerings. And I go to old world with that. I'll let people do what they do in their own faith. But I know in my church, I define tithe as a 10%, and you bring your tithe and your offering, but I'm not asking you for what you don't have.
Right.
And I'm not going to call you unfaithful because I'm raising $1,000 per person for this charity and you don't have it. There are other ways for you to help contribute to this charity. And one thing the Lord has always done for me is when I have made a commitment to my financial future, if there was a monetary goal that I couldn't reach, he either put it in my hand or he helped me find people to meet that need.
So good. Yes. Absolutely. You answered that beautifully, and I knew that you would. Well, we are almost out of time, so I want to give you the opportunity to share anything else real briefly and tell our listeners and our viewers how they can reach out to you. And of course, all that information, gang, is also in the description.
I would like to close by referring to something that you mentioned a few minutes ago. And you talked about how as we come into a higher awareness, it's not to beat ourselves up and feel like, oh, I've messed this up or anything. One of my favorite scriptures talks about how if we ask for wisdom, the Lord will give us wisdom without beating us up. And that's a loose translation there.
Right.
But it's always comforting to me to know that as I grow, wherever I'm at, this is where I'm at. And it's okay. It may not be ideal. It may not be what I want. It may not be the best thing in the world, but this is where I'm at. And it's okay. And we don't have to beat ourselves up. We can move forward and hope that we can turn our lives around financially or otherwise. And we can go confidently in that grace that there is a way forward. and that abundance isn't just something that's promised to the whole world at random, but it's especially promised to me.
Yes.
And I would encourage your listeners and viewers today, believe it for you. You believe abundance for everybody else, but believe it for you.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. Thank you, JJ. I know that everybody here has been so blessed, and you have so many gold nuggets that you're taking away from this today, right? Absolutely. And you can go back and you can re-listen and re-listen. So I want you to do that. And as always, I have a favor to ask of you. I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, and share, because messages like this, they need to get out everywhere. So it's important that we let the world know that there's a whole new world coming, and that we are bringing it forth with these powerful teachings, these incredible interviews. So share away. Thank you, JJ, for being here today. You're truly a blessing and a treasure. I'm so honored that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela, for having me.
And thank you, viewers, for being here. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And as always, just go on out there and keep being the salt and the light everywhere you go. Blessings.